So what's happening with Helldivers 2? Is it really gonna die? Is it on that path? Or is the community just making shit up as we go and there's no reason to be upset? In this video, I'm gonna break all of that down. But in order to understand what's really happening, we gotta go to the beginning. So when the game first came out, it was an absolute sensation. A lot of people were playing it. It peaked at around 460,000 players, which was insane since the Helldivers 1 was nowhere close to these numbers. And overall, everybody was loving the game. And it combined different aspects that really made it so popular, right? Like the memes that were created about the game were just really good. Playing with your friends was extremely fun. But also what really contributed to all of this was the power that we had at the beginning of the game. And by the way, back then the game wasn't even as hard as it is today. Actually, nowhere close, to be honest. And meanwhile, we still had way more powerful tools. And some people might tell you that, you know, the philosophy behind the game isn't that you're supposed to feel powerful at all, but at the beginning we did. And those are just facts. We had a lot of tools that made the game feel really fun. One of them being the railgun. So he dies fast and then the laser takes care of the other shit.
There's two. There's two. Get out. One dead.
Nice.
Let's shoot him.
Goodbye, boss. Bye.
Fly.
But not just the railgun. And we're going to talk about the bug of the railgun that was happening on PS5. But there was also the arc thrower, which could absolutely zap Titans from far away. Not unlimited range, by the way. It was around 50 meters. And it felt really good. We also had a bunch of good weapons, such as the Breaker, the Scorcher, the Slugger, all of this coming from the free warband that came with the game at launch. And overall, the power that we felt in the game was real, man. It was exciting to level up, get to that higher level, to unlock the railgun or get the arc thrower, have a cool team composition and just walk down the bugs and absolutely annihilate them. Because at the end of the day, this is a horde shooter and that's what you want to do. You want to take out as many enemies as possible on both sides, bugs or automatons. And not just the weapons, guys, but when we would get a new stratagem, for example, the Quasar Cannon. Did it just one-shot the charger to the head? Ah! Oh! Let's go! Holy! It felt so good. It was on a 10-second cooldown, and even the mech, when they introduced it, it was a lot of fun with friends. We would all get in the mech and roam the map and destroy our enemies, especially the Terminates, right? It wasn't as great against the bots, but against the Terminates, it was just a great tool. And by the way, it was on a very, very long cooldown, still is, and it never felt overpowered. Now, all of the things that I just mentioned have been nerfed. All of them. They just do not feel good anymore. And let's talk about the railgun specifically, because there was a bug that was happening on the PS5 where sometimes it would do too much damage and you could literally just one-shot Bile Titans. And while I realized that was way too much, the way they nerfed it was also too much. What they did was pretty much because of the bug, they didn't just fix the bug, they just nerfed it across the board to the point that there was no reason to use the railgun anymore. And this is where it really started, right? They started nerfing our powerful tools. And once we move forward here and get to the present day, you will see why this was such a big problem. But back then, it was just one of the first nerfs that took place. And even though people were really upset, nobody thought of it as, okay, you know what? This is going to be what it's going to look like going into the future. We all just thought, you know what? Okay, they nerfed it. It really does suck, but hopefully they're going to bring in some other tools that will make the game fun. And they did. The Quasar Cannon was added to the game. It was very strong. Oh, but guess what? They nerfed it. Also, all of the whatever I mentioned, all of those weapons that I just mentioned, primaries from the warband, railgun, Quasar Cannon, mech, all of them were nerfed. Now, the reason I went over all of this was to point out that at the beginning when the game came out, even though it was easier, again, in terms of enemies, we had a lot of power in our hands. They started taking it away from us. But then we had hope, right? Because they were supposed to add the new warband, aka the battle pass. Everybody was excited. But what happened was when they dropped the warband, the weapons almost came in pre-nerfed. So there wasn't really any point to use those weapons, which meant that the meta stayed the same for a longer period of time. Then they buffed some of the weapons in the first warband, which felt great, I'm not gonna lie. But after that, guys, every warband that came in was just not good. And same happened to the next few warbonds. They would drop the weapons, they would be weak, then some time would pass, they would buff these warbonds, and it became the cycle of, okay, now when the next warband drops, nobody's excited anymore because there is a very high probability the weapons are just gonna be dog shit. And everybody understood this, so it shifted. Now, instead of being excited for the warbonds, everybody was like, what's the point? It's still gonna be bad, and even if it is good, they will nerf it. It was still like a new game, like 2 months in, so people were like still holding on to hope. They were like, no, you know, they've learned their lesson, it's not gonna be the same. And then they added the warband, which introduced the eruptor, crossbow, and the grenade pistol. And this was some of the best weapons they've added to the game from the warband. I would argue that this was the best warband in terms of how powerful the items were while introduced, because the grenade pistol was actually very, very useful for build crafting, and eruptor with the shrapnel was also incredible. But guess what happened next, guys? Yes, you guessed it right. In present day, all of those items that I just went over that were decent, they weren't overpowered, by the way, they were good when they came out, all of them are nerfed. So once again, even though we got items in a warband that were actually good, the devs were like, it's too much, let's nerf them. So now we got into the cycle of, okay, whatever happens in the game, if it's decent, they are gonna nerf it. And this is where they lost the trust. There was definitely communication there, and they did say they were gonna learn from their mistakes and there was gonna be no more nerfs and so on, but all of that ended up being a lie. Now, the next 3 warbonds that dropped, aka battle passes once again, were horrible. And just to make you understand how bad the balancing in this game is, I have to talk about one weapon quickly. So in order for you guys to understand this easily, for the sake of the argument, I'm gonna say that this weapon that came with the battle pass had 100 damage. It was a plasma weapon, but guess what? There was already a weapon in the game that was a plasma gun that had 100 damage. So now we have 2 weapons, one of them being new introduced by the battle pass, that have 100 damage, and both of them are plasma weapons. So you would think, what's the point? Why am I gonna use it if it's the exact same? Well, it's not the exact same, because the new weapon that they added had charge time. Meanwhile, the weapon that was already in the game that was really good already did not have charge time. You could just literally spam it and shoot the weapon until you would run out of ammo. I'm talking about the plasma shotgun. There was also the Scorcher that was a plasma gun, but we're gonna discuss the plasma shotgun and the purifier because they're more similar in terms of like the radius, the damage they do, all that kind of stuff. So once again, there was already a gun that dealt 100 damage. I'm just saying this number for the sake of the argument. And they introduced another gun that has the exact same damage, but it has a charge time, meaning the plasma shotgun can be like shoot, 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 shoot. And the other gun was like charge, shoot, charge, shoot. Can somebody explain to me what the fucking point was of adding that gun to the game? Nobody ever used it. Literally nobody. Yeah, there might be like 2 people that just enjoy how it sounds. I don't know. But even in terms of basic mathematics, it doesn't make any sense. However, before this warband was introduced into the game, it was said that there was going to be S-tier weapons on this warband. So that once again shows you the disconnect between the balancing team and the community and just how they approach and what for them is S tier, because in reality, even in terms of basic mathematics, the gun just doesn't perform. There's no reason to use the gun because you already have plasma weapons with the same amount of damage that do not have charge time. And yes, the plasma shotgun that's in the game had a little bit more travel time, but because you could spam it, you could even add clear faster than you would with the purifier, which was the gun that they added with the battle pass. And they added 2 more war bonds. And just to give you an idea, out of 10 weapons that came with the 3 final war bonds, only 2 were good. Only 2. So that's like 20%, while 80% you will either never use, or if you do use, it's because you just enjoy how it sounds or feels. But in terms of the power, it's just simply non-existent. There's no reason to use these weapons. So That's just to give you guys an idea of how the game started and how the nerfing just went on and on and on with every single war bond. And even if a gun does come out that was good, they eventually nerfed it. And this is where we get to the final patch, which came with the biggest update that they've ever had, and that was the Escalation of Freedom. These nerfs that came with their biggest update is after everything that I just talked about. So after they got tons of feedback from the community that the game was just not fun anymore because their weapons were getting weaker and weaker and weaker. And here's the biggest difference that we're getting to here with the Escalation of Freedom. But you guys remember how I said that the game was much easier when it started? And on top of that, we had very powerful tools, which didn't make the game like super easy. It was still challenging, but it was fun because you could kill the enemies, right? But now, if you follow the trend, because of all the nerfs, our tools got much weaker and weaker and weaker, which equals not having fun anymore in a horde shooter because there's literally infinite amount of enemies spawning on you at all times, but you can't shoot them. That's why I keep saying currently in Helldivers 2, the meta is running. A little bit of shooting, then run, a little bit of shooting and run. That's literally all you can do currently. And that's what the game became, instead of just holding your ground with the rail cannons and arc throwers and zapping them and then getting overwhelmed a little bit, repositioning and then taking them out again. No, that is not there anymore. All you got to do is move at all times. Now that the game got much harder with the Escalation of Freedom, which brought a lot of new enemies, which are also broken, by the way, mechanically, because they can stun lock you. I'm looking at you, Impaler, which can literally stun lock you, can hit you. And by the time your character manages to get up, because the animation takes anywhere from 40 to 57 minutes just to get up from the ground, the Impaler will hit you again and can literally stun lock you. So this is also like mechanically not done correctly, but that's not even the main point. The point is they introduced the new enemies, which made it much harder, and at the same time nerfed the guns that should have given us the ability to deal with the tougher enemies. So the game became harder, but we became weaker. And what a surprise it is to see that the players do not enjoy playing the game as much. Now let's take a look at this little clip that came with the trailer of the Escalation of Freedom, and then I'm going to try to explain to you what I think is a big problem with the game.
We're also introducing a larger type of outpost, and it's going to be a real challenge to take on these massive fortresses. But if you manage to do so, there will be great rewards waiting for you.
So right here in the clip, you heard Palstad say that there's going to be new missions and so on, which by the way, there are new missions and they're pretty cool. But then you also hear him say that the missions are hard, but the rewards are worth it. That was the idea pretty much of whatever he said. Now, the problem is, guys, when we first completed these missions, all we got from completing this extra kind of layer of difficulty in these new difficulty, by the way, of the missions, 2 purple materials and 4 rares. That's it. Now you might think, yeah, Pip, what's the problem? Well, the problem isn't even necessarily that it's 2 and 4. The problem is that these guys think and consider that these rewards are worth it. So that's when you understand, oh, wait a minute, their view on what's worth it and is great rewards is completely different from what the community thought of when they said great rewards. So now they kind of had built up an expectation of something like, oh, you know what, I'm gonna do this. Maybe there's a new type of materials that we're gonna get and we're gonna be able to save them up for something and unlock some cool stratagem, or maybe upgrade this or upgrade that. Now, instead of all of those things, because you mentioned great rewards, you gave us 2 purples and 4 rares. I can literally get that on difficulty 6 in like 2-3 minutes. Nobody cares about 2 and 4. But once again, the problem isn't the number. I'm sure that in the future, they're going to up those numbers. The problem is how different their look on what is great rewards is compared to the community. And that's what really scares me, because I don't see how this will change, right? I do understand that it could change, but when the philosophy of the creators and the consumers is so different from each other, there's going to be problems. Now, do I think that they could change? Yes. As I said, I do think that Palstad is pretty smart And I do think that he understands that this is not what the community want. And I also don't think that he's one of those dudes that has insane ego to be like, you know what? No, I think 2 and 4 is great. If you don't want to play the game, don't play the game. So yes, this could all be fixed, and hopefully it will be. So after the Escalation of Freedom dropped, and the numbers weren't that great, because usually when there's a big update that drops for a game like Helldivers 2 that was so popular, it doesn't usually go up to the, their peak of all time, which is like 460,000 players or something. But people were expecting to hit like 100, 150, maybe even 200k players. They only managed to get to, I believe, around 62,000 players. But the problem wasn't just the update not being good, because the update, in my opinion, was pretty decent. It had some new enemies and the missions were cool. We already went over the rewards with those extra missions. But overall, the gameplay loop definitely changed, and it became fun for me personally when I was fighting the Terminids. But the problem wasn't that. The problem was that when the update was dropping, they dropped the patch notes as well. And surprise, surprise, there was nerfs right before the update. So now, while you're downloading the game, people are checking the patch notes, and what do they see? Literally, some of the most popular weapons that were not overpowered got a nerf once again. So while the community is waiting for this biggest update and hoping, because of the promises of the devs that the devs themselves have made, where they said no more nerfs, we're listening. Oh, and by the way, there was a great patch in between where they buffed orbitals and eagles and all of these things, and guess what happened? People were happy. People were playing the game, were making new builds. Everybody was excited for the future. And in a way, that patch was what warranted the excitement for this upcoming biggest update that they'd ever had, Escalation of Freedom. So everybody was excited, right? Oh, they're not gonna nerf it. The patch that they did with orbitals and eagles is gonna be awesome. So now let's take a look at this patch notes. I can't wait to see it. Boom, the patch notes drop, nerfs and nerfs. So you guys see where the trust is being destroyed with the community, because what's the point now? You tell me you're not going to do it, you're still going to do it, and you still keep doing it over and over again. And there's a reason why there's less people playing, because once again, even though I personally love the game and I do find it fun in many ways, it's definitely not as fun as it used to be, because all of these tools are being taken away from the players. And guys, keep in mind, as I said, the difficulty was going up. Our tools were not. And before the Escalation of Freedom dropped and made the game even harder, they had already made the game even harder by increasing the heavy armored enemies on the battlefield. And we're talking crazy increase. If you would see like behemoth chargers, let's say 1 or 2, now you would see 7, 10 of them just running around all the time. And before the Escalation of Freedom drops with the patch notes, they nerfed the one tool that gives me the ability to deal with these insane heavy armored enemies. That was the flamethrower. Meanwhile, introducing a completely new difficulty with Escalation of Freedom. So let's get this straight. Not only did they increase the amount of behemoth chargers before Escalation of Freedom, which already made the game much harder, even with flamethrower, it was insane because there was just so many of them. But then they added the Escalation of Freedom update and added a completely new super hell dive difficulty.
Difficulty 10 has more enemies than we've had before on lower difficulties. We've really ramped it up. It's meant to feel like a real progression from 9 to 10.
And with the patch notes, without putting the nerf to the flamethrower in the balancing patch, they put it in miscellaneous so that probably people wouldn't see that it was a balancing thing, because they probably expected people to be really upset about this. So they nerfed the fire and the way it worked against enemies completely, as they made the game so much harder. And not just that, 2 days later, after nerfing fire, they introduced the fire battle pass. Yeah, that really happened. They nerfed fire, and then they added fire weapons to the game that now nobody's using, because the way fire works was completely nerfed, which then also nerfed one of the most powerful support weapons in the game. So now there was less tools to deal with these insane amounts of heavy armored enemies. But all of this happened right before they introduced the flame Orban. Now, if I'm being honest, I understand why they did it. They did it because they didn't want to balance the primary fire weapons that were added to the game, so they wouldn't destroy the heavy armor as easily as the support flamethrower did. So they didn't want that to happen. So instead of taking their time and actually fixing and balancing them separately, they took the easy way out, and they were like, you know what, why should we balance it this way? Let's make the game even harder so that less people play our game, and let's just nerf fire this way. Boom, done. They took the easy way out, and now none of the fire weapons are of any use because there's just no reason to use them. There's not. And trust me, this is coming from a player that has 1,300 hours in the game. I play solo super Helldive all the time, and I love fire weapons. Those were my favorite weapons in the game. Everybody that watches me knows this, but I just don't use them anymore because there's honestly no point. Can you use them? Can you still make them fun? Yes, I enjoy using them, but me enjoying it doesn't make them good. Obviously, when this happened and the people realized that they were hiding this change and didn't put it into balancing and it was kind of hidden in the miscellaneous, people got pissed off. They got really, really pissed off. And now, with everybody being upset, what happens? They got to do damage control. So they make this huge post about, like, you know, they're going to be fixing the game. They missed the mark. And in the next 60 days, they're going to be doing everything they can to make the game fun. Now, the problem here for me personally is I don't believe in none of this until I see the actions. Like, I'm one of those guys. I'll listen to your words, but I don't think that words really matter that much. I believe that behavior is a language, and from what I've seen, their behavior has been saying one thing and doing the other, telling me you're not going to nerf, but then nerfing, telling me you're not going to change this, but then changing. And on top of that, something I do want to mention is, even though they are very precise and very fast with nerfing, they haven't fixed some of the biggest issues in the game till this day. And I'm not even talking about the disconnects and connections and whatever. I'm talking about the enemies. For example, the Bile Titan. Do you know how long the Bile Titan head damage has been inconsistent? It is crazy. Sometimes you shoot it with like 4 shots of rockets, it will die. Sometimes you need 11, sometimes you need 2, and they know this is an issue. Why not focus on that, which would indirectly buff the weapons and the stratagems that we're using to take out the Bile Titans, instead of just focusing on nerfs, taking away ammo from primary weapons. Ammo. It's a horde shooter, my guy. It's a horde shooter. Infinite bugs are pushing me. Guess what I need to kill them? Ammunition. You're taking away ammunition from me, which is literally the main thing I need to shoot the enemies. If I can't shoot the enemies, I can't kill the enemies. And you know what I do? I run. That's all I do. And guess what? That was not the case when the game came out. We had better tools. The enemies weren't as crazy as they are today. So you just scaled up the difficulty by literally introducing super Helldive and made our tools weaker and weaker and weaker, to the point that it's nothing but a running simulator at this point in order to get a win. And I did complete solo super Helldive quite a few times, and watch the gameplay. You'll see what I mean. It's always move, 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 shoot a little tiny bit, move, 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 shoot a little tiny bit more, and move. It's not a horde shooter anymore because we're not killing most of the stuff. We're just on the move. And this is why people are not enjoying it. People want to kill shit. They want to shoot shit. They want to blow up shit. That was the whole beauty of this game. But because the balancing team is so locked in on balancing every single ammo, and oh, God forbid, you have 1 extra magazine in a horde shooter with infinite bugs, yeah, then the game's gonna be broken. So, can this all be fixed? Maybe 1 or 2 chances left, one of them being if they do introduce a patch before that 60-day whatever fix they're trying to introduce, which would at least buff the weapons to the point that people can have fun until they start fixing the game. Now, do I think they will do it? No, I don't think they will. I've made content for a while now, and I do understand that sometimes when the devs have some kind of perspective on the game, they just don't walk it back. They just don't. And then eventually, a year later, they're still gonna end up making the exact changes that the community wanted, but the community is not gonna be interested anymore. And then they're gonna be like, oh, but we made the changes. Well, it's a year late, but Could I be wrong? I really do hope so. I really hope I'm wrong because I fucking love this game. I enjoy this game. I'm passionate about the game. I really want to make content about the game and enjoy it with my viewers, with my friends, everything like that. But I don't know if that's going to happen. I guess we'll have to wait and see. And one of their biggest chances is going to be to fix the game by the time the Illuminate come out, which is going to be the new enemy type in the game. Now, from what I understand, it's not going to be anytime soon because they did say this 60-day kind of process that they're going to have to fix the game. And they talked about some of the broken mechanics in the game, which should have been fixed a long time ago. But it is what it is. Hopefully it's happening now. So I don't think that the Illuminate is going to appear in the next 60 days, which means that in order to get the Illuminate, we're going to have to wait even longer. Is the game dead currently? No, I don't think the game is dead at the moment. Is the game going to be dead if they continue this way? There's a high probability. Yes, because this is just not it, man. This is not it. And nobody here hates your game. We want to have fun in the game. And if you compare today's state of the game to how much more fun it was when the game first came out, it's night and day. And all we want is just to have the ability to shoot bugs in a game where there's infinite bugs. So guys, please, this does not come from a place of hate. It comes from a place of love and passion about the game. And I'm pretty sure I speak for a lot of the community that this game is really loved. Everybody wants to have fun in this game. Let us have fun. We're not asking for much. Just balance the game in the way that it's fun. We're not asking for broken items, overpowered items. Just stop taking ammunition away from us and let us kill the damn bugs. Yeah, that's about it. That's what I wanted to go over. Make sure to let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. I will try to answer as many comments as possible. Thank you for all the amazing love and support. As always, stay positive, stay disciplined, and I'll see you all on the next one.
Let's go! Let's go, baby! Let's go!
I mean, we literally have the best community of all time. Oh! Oh, he got no scoped.